Baldur's Gate just got a ton of new updates. We'll go over the recent Steam sales, as well as go over the edition comparisons, as there's a few things we need to talk about there. The NDA also dropped, so we'll go over a few small things and non-spoilers. We'll also go over the differences between the PS5 and the PC version, and we'll talk about the difficulty settings that will be there on launch. We got a lot to talk about. What's up, world? We're back in the video. They're checking out all things Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, so let's just jump into some of the Steam statistics, as Baldur's Gate has already topped the charts. And yesterday, Baldur's Gate 3 was actually topping the Steam charts. It was number 5 in Germany, however there was Steam Deck that was at number 1, so technically it was number 4. Globally, it was at number 4 as well, apparently. And today it did drop to number 2 behind CSGO. However, Counter-Strike had their big CSGO 2 just happen, and there's a bunch of stuff there. Technically, that game is also free to play, and so there's not really a lot to be on that sales besides from in-game cases. So this is actually the top-selling game as of right now. Kinda crazy that it's gone from number 21 all the way to the number 1 spot, and the game isn't even out yet. Now there's that big edition comparisons that you probably should know if you don't already. But essentially, if you do pre-purchase the game right now, the standalone version of the game, they will actually upgrade you to the deluxe edition of the game completely free. Now this only happens right now during the pre-order time. This will not happen after. And the reason being is because they moved the launch date from the later August all the way down to August 3rd. Or moved up, moved down, however what you want to phrase it. Essentially, the release date is a lot closer now, and they've actually taken a month off of the release date. So you're getting the game a lot sooner. However, the Early Access Edition was included, or the Early Access to the game was included with Deluxe Edition. However, the Deluxe Edition no longer grants Early Access, as they've already taken a month off of the release date. So they said because of stipulations and other things, they can't grant that Early Access to Act 1 anymore, or at least the Early Access to the game in general. Now this only applies to the PC version, as the PS5 version is coming out September 6th, so they will actually get early access to Act 1. However, that's because they're getting the game about a month later. Now, the reason for that is they want to try to achieve 60 FPS on the PS5 version. There was some stuff on some of the older videos. The PS5 version appears to be somewhat graphically dated, at least based on the Sony trailers of it, but this was quite a while ago, so it could be quite different. Now, unlike Diablo 4, this game was actually made with keyboard and mouse in mind. However, that does leave the controller kind of getting the worst end of it, apparently, at least with some of the scroll wheel stuff and some of the hotkeys. So if you are thinking about playing with this with a controller, just know that it was developed in mind more so for the keyboard and mouse. So a lot of functionality is a tiny bit clunky from reviewers that are kind of tested the game out on controller. Still should be fine overall, but obviously with a click and point game and things like that, it's going to be a lot easier on a keyboard and mouse than it will be with a controller trying to get the analog to be at the exact position you want. So just to know, there might be a few differences there. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not 100% sure, haven't found anything if the keyboard and mouse will work on console with this game. I know with Diablo 4 it didn't work, so my assumption would be that it might not work, but I would assume that it probably would, seeing as this is a game that was ported to console, whereas Diablo 4 was ported to PC. So my guess is for now it probably will work with the keyboard and mouse on the console. Now, because the NDA did drop, there's been a few things discussed, but a lot of stuff is still being kept hidden. Josh Strife Hayes actually dropped one and said since the NDA is over, armor dyes are in. And a lot of people are curious if you would be able to dye your armor, or if even dyes were in the game at all. Really happy to hear that they're adding a lot more customizability, especially with the armor sets. The more and more I look into this game and all the deep dive stuff, it just seems like this game has a ton to offer. We also had a comment here on Lorian Channel's YouTube. It's an important question: can elves have beards? And Lorian Studios replied yes. So you also be able to have customizability in beards with the elves as well. Now, because Baldur's Gate 3 has had such high sales and it's one of the most anticipated RPG launches in a pretty long time, we've had other games delay their launch because of this. So Summerfall Studios actually put out a tweet saying that Stray Gods would now release on August 10th. And even in their note of why they delayed, they said we want everyone to have ample space to check out Stray Gods when it launches. Baldur's Gate 3 is a hotly anticipated by us too, and we want to give our fans room to celebrate Stray Gods. So they did delay it exactly 1 week, and I do think this is for the best. fast. It might almost be better to even delay it by 2 weeks, although you're cutting into Starfield kind of close. Although I do think a week is ample enough time for people to check out Baldur's Gate and then check out Stray Gods if they want to too. Competing on the same day like that is just not going to be good for any game company. And it's cool to see a game studio appreciate another game and understand that, hey, let's not overwhelm fans and have these two games launch at the same time. Let's give them time to experience the highly anticipated game as well as ours. Now, there was a recent article that just got published here about the Baldur's Gate difficulty settings. And this is from Screen Rant, who did confirm that Baldur's Gate will have 3 difficulty modes and settings. Now, the first mode, or the default mode, will be something called Balanced, and this is more like the default setting, or kind of like the base setting that most games get at normal level. And it is to note that the difficulty settings don't just affect combat, but they also determine how easy or difficult it is to progress in all challenges. This includes speech checks or even saving throws. Now, there is also a lower difficulty, and that is the story mode, which is called Explorer. It's described as a narrative experience where players can put story before the combat. In this mode, the friendly NPCs are harder to down, so you do have to be careful about that with the friendly NPCs. Even the trade prices are better, but the biggest change comes to the player's proficiency bonus. In Explorer mode, players will receive an extra 2 to the proficiency, giving the player +4 at level 1. This is an insane boost as the stats at that level are very, very low. Just for example, a +4 for proficiency is not given until level 9. This will not only make combat much easier in Baldur's Gate 3, but it will also, for the roles itself, will allow players to worry less about failing and focus on experiencing the story. Now, there is one last difficulty setting, and that is the most challenging difficulty setting called Tactician mode. They said it will provide even a greater challenge for even the most experienced players, forcing them to approach combat in completely new ways. And there are actually several layers to this increased difficulty. The first layer is more global and increases the enemy hit points and AC. It also makes it a little bit easier for enemies to hit the party, and in some cases increased or changed enemy types. However, the second layer is what makes it really difficult. The second layer is more local, looking at each combat encounter individually. Enemies also change their weapons or ammo type using better versions of what they had for more devastating consequences. So the goblins who used regular arrows in balanced mode might be using fire arrows in Tactician, or even have their classes changed for completely new abilities. Now, the third layer to this is something they consider called brutal AI, where every AI strategy are insanely improved. Enemies in this mode will behave more tactically, with them targeting squishier party members first, or spellcasters who are concentrating. Holland explained the brutal AI was designed to make it feel like players are facing off against a real DM. This one definitely seems really challenging, and it will be cool to see all the different stuff and maybe even speedrunners and things like that trying to get through it. The more I learn about this game, the more enticed that I am. Really happy to see that gaming is getting some nice big releases here. And if you want to keep up all things Baldur's Gate 3, be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video, and until the next doses.